So the other day, I was looking at my YouTube statistics, and I found out that 100%... Oh god, what the fuck am I going to say? I found out that 100% of my viewers are male. So I guess for my introduction from here on out, it might as well be, alright boys, Torpid here, bringing you another Dawn of War 2 cast, featuring Piano on the blue team as the Warp Spider Exarch, against yours truly, Senpai Torpid Dao, playing as the Lord Commissar, representing the red team. Mordian Guard for the win. Map is Greentooth Gorge. Why do we like that? Because it has garrisons that look like Space Marines. Kind of. Look like creepy faces at the very least. I didn't read much of that chat, but I seen anal roll, I think. Oh. I apologise in advance for any debauchery that you have to read, thanks to the observer chat. Should really try and figure out a script that removes that. I think that's the one. Interest script removes the observer chat, right, but not the all chat. Okay, anyway, what the hell's going on here? So, Warp Spider Exarch and Greentooth Gorge, very good because he can abuse the garrisons and he can teleport across all these little chasms. And we see triple gens instantly from Piano, and we see the Warp Spider Exarch being an absolute pain in the arse. Look at that, decapping my natural requisition. Very frustrating. But I'm trying to combat his frustration that he causes with the Warp Spider Exarch with the frustration that I can cause with double Sentinels. I don't remember this game, by the way, guys. It was a very long time ago. I think it was prior to the Elite League. I was training Piano because I knew that I wasn't able to finish the Elite League because I was away. I was on holiday in Scotland visiting my family. So I wanted to train up Piano because he's like my little bro. He's like my little apprentice from a long, long time ago. So I was trying to train him up on how to beat the double Sentinels because, of course, two of the biggest threats in Elite League Season 4 were Twilly and Best Noob, both of whom are known for their very powerful IG. And Sentinels, of course, are a big threat that any IG player can always pull out. So of course he loses the early game map control because he's opting for only 2 Dire Avengers. Now there's a lot of debate whether in this matchup you should go for the 2 Dire Avengers or whether you should go for a triple. I think both of them are viable. Obviously if you go for double Dire Avengers then you get out your second Shuriken sooner because you're still going to be... well, either way you get to drop triple generators pretty much instantly, but you have more requisition banked up to get the Shuriken a little quicker. But you risk losing more map control, and if the IG player does really well, he might actually end up just camping your farm and dropping a las turret there, which could completely mess you up. So I guess it's a bit... the triple Dire Avengers is a bit safer, but get... what the hell? Come on, Torpid, that was terrible. He threw the grenade behind himself, and then I walk into it. Alright then. There's a lot of messing around all over the map, scrambling about, trying to fight for the map control. Drop down my remaining 2 gens now at last. But as you can see, economically, he is massively ahead. But I've got the VP lead and the majority of the map. Probably more experience on my units as well. Or not, I don't think I've not killed a single model yet. Wow. Kudos to Piano. I've not killed a single model of his. Nice splitting up of the Sentinel and the Hero, of course, which allows the Hero to get in and tie up the Shuriken. That's going to be a staple of any sort of IG play that you're going to want to do when you're relying on Sentinels. It doesn't matter what your IG Hero is, you're going to need to be using them to tie things up, even if you're the Lord General. So I think that Piano is just going to go for... does anyone have any red yet? He's got 6 red and I've got 4. Wow. Not a lot of models lost, I suppose. I think he's just going to go straight for tier 2 at this point. He's going to have quite a lot of requisition when he does so. I guess that's not a terrible thing. Playing as the Warp Spider, I guess you could actually use that requisition to drop down Warp Spiders. They're okay against IG. You don't really want to use them in sustained ranged combat. They're definitely a skirmisher kind of unit. Pop in, bleed a few models, pop out before you lose any models. Pop in, throw off your haywire to allow you to kill a vehicle. Pop out. Commissar, really, really fortunate there. Just avoiding the Arc of Fire in time. Ooh, looks like that's probably going to be a dead Sentinel though. They seem to be missing a lot of their shots because they're firing on the move. Yeah, they're going to kill it. Okay, so they pick off one Sentinel, but they've gone quite deep to do it. So they're losing out on a lot of the map control. But really, I don't really have a counter to the Shuriken here. It would have been nice to have got Spotters. Spotters is obviously what you want when you're fighting against a Shuriken. Wow, I'm only getting the Sergeant up now. Damn, it's really late. And I've not gone for any stomps either, so you're really seeing the economic power of this build. Now, obviously, the Warp Spider Exarch is really good on this map. It is a very good map for him. I think I pretty much chose this to give Piano as much of an advantage as possible, as of course I am a decent player. It's not really expected to beat my IG, and Piano is not a Eldar main by any stretch of the imagination. Really, Piano plays Space Marines the most. He is a little bit masochistic like that. But yeah, even so, we can see how this build is great. He's enabled himself to get to tier 2 first, and he's ended up killing a Sentinel and not bleeding many models. But the downside is, look at the VPs. He has had to concede that 200 VPs in order to achieve this. So that's definitely something that you have to consider. But his army scales a lot better than mine. I could have gone for the Spotters to help me counter the Shurikens, but of course I knew he's going to have a Falcon up if I do that. And the Falcon will just bowl through my troops, it will gem bash me, and I'll be screwed. So I didn't go for any tier 1.5 because I wanted to get my tier 2 at a relatively even speed as him. Now, he knows that as well, so he's opted to not go for the Falcon because he knows I'll be able to counter it relatively easily, getting a missile launcher on my Sentinel. If I had 2 Sentinels, it'd be even easier, but unfortunately I do not. Being able to keep the Sentinels alive until tier 2 is pretty important in this matchup, because if you do get the missile launcher, they become really helpful not only in deterring things like Wraithlords and Falcons, but with their fragmentation missiles, they will actually counter the Shurikens pretty well. But they won't counter the Wraithguard, and also the Dire Avengers once they get their Exarch. They become so much more durable. I can't remember how much of a passive damage resistance he gives from ranged attacks, but he does to the rest of the squad. I think it's like 25% or something. It's pretty substantial. Plus, of course, he's a pretty durable leader as well, so he really turns the Dire Avengers into a whole new beast. But the Chimera comes out, and it's utilizing the fact that it can fire from all angles to hit everything. Oh my god, look at the fucking damage that it took from that first barrage of the Wraithguard. I don't even think all of the models hit it there, but they got rear armor, and that was just brutal. Not actually managing to force off any squads. You can see the durability that the Dire Avengers get, thanks to the fact they've got both upgrades. And I have to drop a flare down here to ensure that the Lord Commissar doesn't die. But he gets wrecked by a really nicely timed grenade on retreat there. Very well played from Piano. Honestly, at this point, this is a pretty rough situation for me. Opting to go for a Manticore. This is a bit wild. Definitely anti-meta, but I guess ultimately I don't really have any counter to the Shurikens at this point, and they're causing me a little bit of trouble. Wraithguard are countered by tying them up in melee, but how can you tie them up in melee if there are suppression teams nearby? You can't, so I need to counter them. Now I could have gone for Spotters, which would have been cheaper. It would cost me a lot less power, and also would be a lot less upkeep, but the problem with Spotters is they don't counter Shurikens on their own. You can knock them out of the way, but you need to have other units nearby to then force them off, and I don't actually have a numbers advantage at this point, so I guess that's my reasoning as to why I got the Manticore. Of course, I haven't played this game in ages, so I don't really remember exactly what was happening, but it looks like a decent purchase, for once. The other thing to note about the Manticore is it does actually do very strong anti-vehicle damage, if you can hit it. Generally, to hit it, you are going to need a snare as well, but yeah, that was a really solid first Manticore strike, forcing off 3 units at once. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to get a wipe with it, because it was right in the middle of a big engagement where he was looking at me. But if I can get back out onto the field and prevent the Wraithguard from getting a full bash, that'll be really nice. So I've split up my guardsmen at this point, going for the Commissars on both of them. I guess it's necessary because I need that field presence, and I did put the Commissar inside of the Chimera so I can get him out tie up the Wraith Guard a bit sooner, but he counters that using the Entangle from the Warp Spider. And it looks like I wanted to put the Commissar inside the Chimera there, but I'm not going to be able to do it. Ooh, the Stubbornness heal procs just in time for the Commissar to survive and not be killed by the melee attacks of the Warp Spider Exarch. For a ranged hero, the Warp Spider Exarch is very competent in melee. You can see me just constantly driving the Chimera around in different zigzags to try and avoid the Wraith Guard shots. If you're moving at a decent pace, you will avoid Wraith Guard shots with your vehicle, but he can counter that by attacking ground, which is obviously quite an advanced maneuver and is quite micro-intensive, but it makes the Wraith Guard amazing, because suddenly they're countering your static infantry trying to shoot them, they're countering your melee running at them, they're countering your vehicles. We see a Wraith Lord coming out as well. It's going to be quite hard to counter. I don't really have any options for AV. I mean, I can get the missile launcher on the Sentinel. If I can somehow snare it, probably going to have to... Well, I mean, I have 2 snares, right? So I can either go for a heavy weapons team, get a last cannon on it, or I could go for Stormtroopers and get the melter guns.
The enemy is claiming a victory.
The heavy weapons team is kind of tricky because of the fact that he's the Warp Spider Exarch, so he could just teleport into it and force melee. He has options to fleet in and just throw grenades on it. And the Wraith Guard as well are going to do really good damage. So I think, honestly, if I want to get that snare, and I'm going to need a snare, I'm probably going to have to get Melter Stormtroopers. Now, they'll synergize decently with the Chimera, reinforcing off of it on the field, being able to move around a little bit more quickly. If I can snare it, chip away at itself with a missile launcher, and then blast it with a Manticore, I should be in a decent spot to kill the Wraith Lord. But it's going to be tough because the Wraith Lord, of course, can get that wrist-mounted Bright Lance, and that can make it kill the Chimera really easily. Now, I've done a good job so far of evading the Bright Lance with my Chimera. This is what makes it so hard to kill the Chimera. It's just so quick. So if I walk into him in a big engagement, obviously I'm going to lose the Chimera, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just messing him about, going around the side of the map, backcapping his natural VP, gem bashing him, and he constantly has to try and readjust and move his units about. The Wraith Guard are really slow. When they get up here, I'm probably just going to get in the Chimera and run. And then they have to waste time chasing me around. Now, the Webway Gates are a really good way to counter that. Webway Gates can give you mobility all around the map to set up ambushes. We see the Dire Avengers doing precisely that. Wow, the Manticore is really far forward. I don't know what it's doing over here. I guess probably trying to snipe out something in the garrison there. Oh my god, the Chimera is looking like it's going to fall to another Bright Lance shot. Uses the Flare, which... I mean, it saves the Manticore. I mean, it saves the Chimera. Really nice stomp there. Wow, stunning both of the setup teams, but obviously the Manticore is in a completely compromised position here. It is going to fall. That was pretty poor play, really. I don't know why I had it so far down. That really didn't need to happen. But the Chimera manages to get out there. A bit of a valiant sacrifice on behalf of the Manticore, keeping the Wraith Lord distracted, and the Stomp come in and assisted in saving the Chimera by stunning both of these suppression teams. But I'm losing all of the map at this point, and as you can see with the rosters, I have significantly fewer squads. But my squads are very good. What's that? Flak Jacket. Done a lot of damage to that Dire Avenger squad, but didn't manage to kill the Exarch, which is a bit annoying. Sentinel stays alive, but it's a very low health, really. If the Wraith Lord turns around and starts using that wrist-mounted Bright Lance, it could do really well. But we do see the Power Claw actually on the Lord Commissar. But he's actually doing really huge amounts of damage to the Wraith Lord in combination with the Sentinel. Warp Spider. Let's slow this down a bit. What is going on here? So, oh my goodness. The Sentinel fell to the Warp Spider Exarch, teleporting in from behind, and I tried to drop a bunker to block line of sight. That's a really cheesy pro-level IG tactic that you will notice. But the Commissar actually managed to survive in melee combat against the Wraith Lord due to the constant heals proccing from the Stubbornness, thanks to having 2 fully upgraded Guardsman squads nearby. Now the Sentinel went down, but the Chimera has survived. So I'm in an okay spot right now. Let's go back to normal speed. Flak Jacket's coming down once again, instantly sniping the Warlock leader on that Wraith Guard. Huge chunk of damage dealt to them. What does that cost? 65 requisition and 15 power down the drain. And the Chimera at this point could just brute force push through. Drive straight past the Bright Lance. I can just strafe around in circles now, presumably that's what I'm going to do. Nope, dropping out my Commissar to tie up the Shuriken. And because I have so many guardsmen nearby, he's just going to keep healing from the stubbornness. But of course you can't kill the guardsman because the Chimera's there as well, and I'm doing a good job keeping the Chimera behind the guardsman as well. Shuriken goes down, kind of staying in this engagement massively. Now I notice that he has to retreat through a lot of my guardsmen. They're going to leave him fairly weak, so I drop down the Commissar Mines to try and snipe some squads on retreat. Don't quite manage it. Oh, scratch that, I do. Wow, that was long range firing from the Chimera. Pretty brutal. Finally notice the Webway Gate over here and get the Commissar onto that one. Commissar nearly level 4 at this point. He's put in so much work with this loadout. Pretty rare to see the Power Claw, but you know, it does actually turn into a decent anti-vehicle weapon. I purchased a heavy weapons team. I guess to get a las cannon, maybe to kill the Wraith Lord. Maybe. I didn't notice when I actually purchased that heavy weapons team if it was while the previous Wraith Lord was knocking about. Probably was. Interesting choice to get the Stormtroopers as well. I guess they're a nice option to have something that's power free to contest the map control and can deal decent damage against the Fort Spider and the Dire Avengers. Mines coming down and actually snaring the Wraith Lord here, which combined with the snare of the las cannon 100% snares it. You can see that the snare from the mines lasts ages. We walked into that ages ago. Actually killing the Spirit Seer on the Wraith Guard once again. That's pretty terrible. Fort Spider Exarch needs to tie up the las cannon. Does so just in time, but this Commissar's around now. He could run down and probably finish it off at this point. I guess he's too far away. But the Wraith Lord's going to be healing in base for quite a lot of time. Oh, missed micro on my behalf here. Should be decapping this point. Wow, that's a lot of damage coming onto the Spider. Probably going to fall in retreat due to all the last fire. And he does. Piano really capitulating at this point. His inability to kill Chimera is really biting him in the ass. The Chimera is now level 3. Commissar is now level 4. War Spider is only level 1. Dire Avenger is level 2. Wraith Guard done well, but level 2 as well. But because he lost that Wraith Lord, he's just in a pretty awful spot at this point. As mentioned here, I'm telling him, you don't really want to be buying the Spirit Seer for your Wraith Guard because I am just going to use the Flak Jacket to instantly snipe him, and that's going to stun all 3 of your Wraith Guard models and do an additional, I believe it's 200 HP damage per model. So it just puts you in a really horrible position. So you need to rely on your Exarch on your Dire Avengers to speed up your Wraith Guard instead. Boom. Loads of damage to that Dire Avenger squad. I think it's 300 damage it does. Now I don't think the Dire Avenger Exarch has 300 HP, so I think the range damage resistance that he has actually lowers the damage that you take from Flak Jacket. Interesting play here from Piano going for double Wraith Lords, but I have so much AV on the field at this point. I guess I did. Did I get the upgrade for the Stormtroopers? Oh, I did, so I can't get the Melt Guns. And I did lose my Sentinel. So I do only actually have the las cannon and the Power Fist, but these mines are really useful. Obviously, Eldar rely on rangers to detect, and that's not something that you can just purchase with a click of a finger. That's a bit more of a bigger investment than something like a knob for your shooter boys or a sergeant for your scouts. So abusing things that infiltrate against Eldar can be very effective, but we see Piano conceding at this point. He's just bleeding in every engagement. Wraith Lord down to 1 model again. And ultimately I am going to get more AV on the field, whatever I choose to go for. I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point. Honestly, I could probably have just gone tier 3 and then gone for a Lehman, and that would have been the end of the game that way. I guess he maybe could have played it out a little bit longer, but it was looking dubious. Got to remember the las cannon as well synergizes amazingly with the Lord Commissar because you can execute it to make it do double damage. So it'll be killing vehicles extremely quickly. And then even if they do overwhelm you, well, it's not necessarily the case that you're going to lose the executed squad because you just pop them into the Chimera and drive off. Chimera nearly hit level 4 at that point. Chimera was obviously the MVP of this game. What is there to say about this game and how it could have gone differently? Well, honestly, Piano was kind of wrecking me in tier 1. I am a firm believer that double sentinels is not actually particularly viable at high level. They get screened out too quickly by setup teams, and you spend too much time trying to repair them for the amount of bleed that they can inflict on the opponent. In tier 1 I barely even managed to bleed him, and I couldn't actually secure myself a proper bash against his generators, so it's generally better to just go for triple guardsman and 1 sentinel, which will allow you to get better map control, allow you to drop generators sooner, so that you can get spotters out, or Cadishans, depending on what you need to counter in his army. Essentially, that's just a question of, does he go for setup teams, where you get spotters? Does he go for jump squads, where you get Cadishans? And because you went for the guardsmen instead of the sentinels, you can drop your gens earlier. This means that you get your tier 1.5 units out sooner, which in turn means you can keep up in tech with the Eldar or whatever opponent you're facing, even if they're dropping their gens earlier than you. So I wouldn't actually go for double sentinels if I was tryharding as the IG at the moment. From Piano's perspective, obviously it was up here in this massive engagement where I dropped the mines on the retreat path, where the Wraithlord ended up overextending and dying to my Commissar with the Claw. I guess he was underestimating the amount of healing that he gets from the stubbornness. Needed to somehow force off the Guardsman before he was going to stay in that fight, or just get the Wraithlord out of there. I don't know if Rangers would have been a good purchase. Whilst it would have been effective as a counter to my mines, he didn't really have the resources to afford it. It was quite unfortunate how this whole engagement played out. The Chimera was 1 Bright Lance shot off of dying, but I wouldn't have allowed him to get that because of the flare. And the flare usage that I did use with on the Wraithlord to prevent him from finishing it off was very, very clutch, as was the Stomp from the Sentinel. Perhaps if the Shuriken had set up a little bit sooner, it could have deterred the Sentinel from getting the Stomp, and then the Bright Lance could have finished off the Chimera, and this would be a totally different game. Without that Chimera, I probably would have lost. I would have had to have replaced it, and I would have been massively behind. I certainly wouldn't have had the Lascannon Heavy Weapons team. Bit of a misplay on my behalf sending the Manticore so far down. I should have kept it further back. The Manticore was putting in really good work. If I kept the Manticore back here, it would have been able to blast both of those setup teams as well, and that would have again saved my Chimera. And of course, once the last cannon comes out on the field, you can snare the Wraithlord, and then it's really easy to just predict. You place your first one on it, and then you place the free as the sort of retreat path, so to speak, of the vehicle. You do massive amounts of damage to it. It's very easy to snipe vehicles that way with the Manticore. The Manticore's a niche pick. It doesn't provide you any sustain in your army versus army fights, yet it costs you a lot of power. For that reason, you don't see it very often. But if you do struggle at fighting enemy setup teams, and you have a disadvantage in terms of the numbers that you have on the field, the Manticore's nice, because unlike spotters, the Manticore can force off setup teams on its own. So it can force them off, whilst you then use your Guardsmen to go around capping the map. But you're generally not going to need to use Manticores if you go for triple Guardsman, because you're going to have more units on the field than the opponent. This is another reason why triple Guardsman is so effective. Perhaps next patch it will be less so. Guardsmen are set at present to go up in their base cost, which in turn will impact their cost when reinforcing, and they also are going to reinforce a little bit less quickly, so the synergy with the Chimera will be less effective. All those changes are works in progress and subject to change, it must be said, but that's the talk that's going around for now. If you've got any comments on what you think balance should be with regards to patch 2.9.3 or any further patches, do comment down below, or join the Discord, or join the forums. It's all in the description below this video, so you can get involved in the community. I, of course, read all of these comments. I respond to pretty much all of them as well. I also read everything in the official Discord as well, and I will pass them on to the dev team. But I think for this cast, that will be all. Nice to see something other than Space Marines, I think. I was getting sick and tired of casting games with Chaos Space Marines, Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, Space Marines. On that note, if any of you guys have any good 1v1 replays that are nice and close, or showcase any sort of innovative strategies featuring not Space Marines or Chaos Space Marines, please send them my way. Just drop me the download on Discord and I will have a look at it, because I'd appreciate that. I'm struggling to find them. Thank you very much. I know I ramble a lot, but thank you if you're still here. Hope this was an enjoyable and educational enough cast for you. Stubbornness is overpowered, Flare is overpowered, IG need nerfs. Torpid out.